Stephanie. Thanks everyone for waiting, and a very good evening to everyone. It is with great pleasure for the Hive to be hosting another edition of our experience series here at the Hive Carpenter. For those of you who are hearing of the Hive for the first time, the Hive is a network of co-working spaces across Asia for the entrepreneur-minded and growth companies. We have many locations which are in Hong Kong, Thailand, Vietnam, Japan, Taiwan, Singapore, and Australia. If you have any queries on our co-working options or how you can be part of a Hive community, feel free to reach out to the Hive team present here at the event afterwards. Otherwise, you may also reach us via contact@thehive.sg and follow the Hive Singapore on Instagram and our Facebook. Last but not least, this event is brought to you by Hive Live. My name is Aoife, and I'm very happy to introduce to you our esteemed guest speaker for tonight, Stephanie Dickson. Founder of Green is the New Black, Stephanie has been featured by CNBC and is such an inspiring TEDx speaker who has since become Asia's leading voice in sustainability. In short, Stephanie is a key figure at the heart of green innovation who has connected thousands across Asia by hosting annual festivals such as Conscious Festivals in Singapore, Hong Kong, and more. Hello, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us tonight. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation tonight and to hear from all of you as well.
Okay, we'll get right into it. Our very first question we'd like to ask is, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about Green is the New Black. And for the first time audience or anyone who has heard it for the first time, what would be the kind of impression that you want to kind of give out just by that?
So I used to work in fashion. I used to run fashion festivals around Asia. And that was really my dream job. It's something that I always wanted to do when I was a little girl, is work in the glamorous fashion industry. And so I did that for about 4 years after university, and I really did love it. My life was a little bit like Devil Wears Prada, for anyone that's seen that film. And basically, after a couple of years, I just started reading a lot of articles and started watching documentaries, which can be a very slippery slope once you start. And I basically discovered that fashion was one of the most polluting industries and one of the most socially corrupt. And at the time, I felt really blindsided that I'd been working in this industry and I had no idea that was going on behind this glossy curtain. And so it really led me to have a little bit of a crisis, or now there's a term for it, eco-anxiety, but at the time I didn't really know what was going on. So I tried to find a community where I could kind of raise my hand and be like, look, I'm new to sustainability, I don't really know what I'm doing, and get some direction. But at the time, I was kind of faced with a lot of the stereotypes. They were either too businessy, too preachy, or just too hippie, and that really didn't work for me coming from the fashion industry. So I started doing my own events, because that was my skill set, bringing people together to talk about issues that really weren't being addressed at the time, and this was back in 2015. That's how it kind of started, and then it led me to start the Conscious Festival, which is now grown to be an event for around 4,000 people in Singapore and also Hong Kong, and we're going to be expanding to Europe next year. So when we started Green is the New Black and as it's evolved, the main thing that we really want people to take away from it is this idea of little green steps. So this was something that we've been saying for a couple of years now, and it's this idea that sustainability is really a journey. It's something that you can't just change overnight, and we're all on this journey together. So as long as we keep moving forward, as long as we keep taking little green steps, we're moving in the right direction. By breaking it down, some of these big complicated issues like sustainability or carbon neutral or Amazon fires, by breaking these things down into little achievable or understandable chunks, it helps to remove a lot of the overwhelm, but it also helps to empower us to keep moving forward. And so that's really, I guess, on the baseline what Green is New Black is all about. And since we launched our Conscious Festivals, we then decided we wanted to create an online experience for what we created offline. So we launched our media platform, where we have guides and we create content on a daily basis. We have a lot of videos that we do as well, a brand directory, and then we also work now with brands to help them to be more operationally sustainable, but also to help communicate all the amazing things that they're doing.
Oh, thank you. That was really detailed. Covered a few questions of mine, but no worries. I think the next question we'd like to ask is actually what are some of the misconceptions of sustainability, and how do you actually try to explain it to some people who are new to it as well?
Yeah, sustainability is such a hot topic. So just kind of by show of hands, who here kind of cares about plastic? Let's just talk about plastic pollution for a second. Okay, basically got every hand up in the room. For those of you that don't, I'd love to understand why you don't care about plastic pollution, but that's maybe another topic. I see this quite a lot, and I was speaking to this girl a couple of months ago, and she was telling me how passionate she was about the plastic problem, and that she was really, sharing videos every day on her Facebook page, and she was doing all this stuff, and I was like, that's really great. Like, great that you're using your sphere of influence to kind of share about an issue that you're passionate about. And I said to her, what are you doing about this on a daily basis? And she kind of looked at me, she's like, oh, well, I live in Hong Kong, and I get clean water out of my tap, so I buy plastic water bottles. And she's like, and I don't really know what to do about it, and I feel really bad about it, but I don't feel like I have a choice. And I was like, well, there's always choices. And then we kind of worked through it, and now she has like a filter on her water, and there's easy ways that you can actually address these problems. But I kind of see this a lot, that people are quite disconnected between what they're saying, what they're sharing publicly, and what they're actually doing with their daily actions. And so for us, that's one big thing, is that people think that their individual actions don't matter. Well, they absolutely do. And for a long time, as I said, we were talking about little green steps, and a lot of people were like, yeah, but Steph, like, my actions don't matter, I'm just one person, blah, blah, blah. But this year, we were super excited because in June, the UN came out with something called the Anatomy of Action. So basically, they did all the research with scientists and read all these big reports from around the world to try and understand what are the micro actions we can take that actually lead to macro change and lead to that systemic change that we need to be able to mitigate some of these issues we're dealing with climate change. And so they released these 4 key areas, and you can go and look at it, but really it's about the fact that, in fact, collectively our individual actions do matter. So that's like one massive misconception that I love to talk about, because it's such a cop-out to say my actions don't matter, because even in your community, even in your home, they have a ripple effect, even in your office. You're influencing people constantly, even on an energetic level, but also through your actions. So that's one big one. The second one we get a lot is that it's not convenient, which is also not true. Sure, you have to change some of your habits, but trust me, your actions now, if like we look in a few years or in a decade or 2 or whatever, when we're all still going to be alive and we're dealing with migration, we're dealing with water security issues, food security issues, that's going to be so much more inconvenient than the small changes that you can do now or the changes you can push up in your company. And so I think the convenience argument is a really weak one, and again, it's kind of a cop-out. So there are so many easy ways that you can be green. You don't have to go out and buy a whole new wardrobe or buy a whole new set of reusables to be sustainable. And that's kind of leading into the third one, is that people think it's that it's expensive. Yeah. So sustainability does not have to be expensive. You can, like, sometimes the most sustainable thing you can do is actually just keep that shirt you've had for 7 years and just keep wearing it, or upcycle it into something else. Or swap with friends. There's so many amazing solutions, which I'm sure we can get into, but yeah, sustainability does not have to be expensive either.
Okay, great. Moving from that, we also like to learn maybe what is the difference of the perception back then and compared to now. So maybe like older generation, like what do they think of it? What's kind of like the perception gap that you can share out of your experience?
From when I started?
Yes.
Yeah. So when I started, it was really funny because we started calling it like conscious living. So that was kind of, Green is the New Black, it's a conscious living platform. And in the beginning, a lot of my friends were like, Steph, what are you doing? Like, what is this conscious living thing? Like, what, are you gonna become a hippie on us now? Like, you're into sustainability? Like, this is so weird. You just came from fashion. And like my friends, a lot of my friends really didn't get it. And my dad was like, why are you giving up your career to like become an entrepreneur in this thing I don't really understand? And so I guess around, at least in my circles, a lot of people really didn't get it. And the funny thing is now I get people emailing me or messaging me on Instagram being like, hey Steph, like I just watched this documentary, or like the plastic thing's really bothering me now, and like now I'm doing this and I just thought I had to tell you. I'm like, that's so great to hear. So I am seeing like over the times, like in the beginning it was not on the forefront, people weren't talking about it, they thought I was so weird. And I also felt like I was super behind. I felt like I had had an awakening that people had been doing this and advocating for this stuff for years, I just hadn't seen it. And so yeah, there was a lack of information and awareness. Now it's really topical. There's a lot of people talking about it, a lot of things about the plastic pollution crisis that's happened in the last 12 months. Now we're looking at more conversation around carbon emissions, carbon footprint. So I think it's definitely more topical now. People are more aware, but I still think there's a huge gap between the awareness and people actually taking action. And that's for a lot of different reasons, but it's amazing to see that now we are seeing a lot more conversation about this. Obviously, people like Greta Thunberg has been incredible and really sort of like an icon for the movement. And you know, whether you like her or not, it fosters great conversation about this topic, which I love. So yeah, there is a big difference in how it was 5 years ago.
So in your honest opinion, how challenging do you think it is to actually get people now to choose and commit a more sustainable yet fulfilling life in a way? How do you think that's challenging now versus then? Even with a lot of awareness out there, do people still find that very challenging?
Yeah, I think there's still a few hurdles that we have to get over, which is some of the misconceptions we've already mentioned. Obviously, you know, this idea about it being expensive, about inconvenience, and about not wanting to sacrifice. You know, there's a big thing about people feeling they have to sacrifice something. So we're still dealing with a lot of that, but at the same time, I think now lots of people are aware. We actually have to give them the empowerment and the actions so that they can actually implement this in their lives. And this is now, you know, the stats are there. We know that we're catapulting currently in our current trajectory to like 3.4 degree warming. And we know that the Paris Agreement was created to, you know, cap it at 1.5 to 2 degrees. So we're catapulting towards climate catastrophe. And we know that, especially in my circles and the echo chamber that I live in. But there's still this disconnect between the actions. So now I think it's really a collective effort. Obviously, we as individuals, as consumers, as people working in companies have a huge part to play. You know, it is a collective effort to have a tipping point. But business really needs to step up as well. And within corporate companies and within roles, you guys have a role to play in that as well. And then government needs to come in with the policy so that we can actually start working together to mitigate this a lot faster. So a lot needs to be done. I think now we need to stop talking and we need to start doing a lot more.
Great. Okay, so I know many eyes are on the upcoming Conscious Festival. Perhaps you can share with us a bit more on the objectives, how that has also evolved within time, and of course what we can get out of it.
Yeah, so really excited this year for our Conscious Festival. We have a theme this year, which is Climate Change is Real. My co-founder and I went to the Arctic earlier this year on an expedition, which we'll talk more about afterwards. But we were really inspired by what we saw, also kind of terrified in some aspects. And so we really wanted to put a big spotlight on this idea that climate change is real and we need to be addressing this properly. So this year we're really excited because we're in a new venue. We're at South Beach. So it's going to be outdoors but covered. So we're also, constantly coming up with ideas so we can reduce our own impact as a festival, especially when we have thousands of people coming. We've got a lot of incredible art installations that we've been working with a lot of local artists to create and design experiences, all in this, under the inspiration of this climate change is real. And a lot of incredible games. We've actually got Riza who's in the audience doing a game on the SDGs. We've got upcycling workshops where you can make your own map of Singapore from cassette tapes. We've got more well-being focused workshops as well. And then for me, the most exciting thing is always the talks because I curate the talks. So we have 52 speakers. Our youngest speaker, I think, is 11. And so we're really bringing a lot more of the youth into the conversation as well. And we've got 4 main tracks that we kind of cover. So we look at well-being, which is all the conscious living, the mindset piece, that's where we start. And we're really looking at how we can collaborate more and not have so much conflict. Then we move into business, where we're looking at ethical opportunities in the climate crisis and really starting to address what we can do within businesses and also understanding things like we've got some great speakers in the business track. We've got Asad Razouk, who is the Angry Clean Energy Guy. He has a fantastic podcast if you want a crash course in understanding why we're so reliant on fossil fuels and what we can do about it. So he's going to be talking about what the climate movement needs to take from the AIDS movement, which happened in the 80s, and how we kind of need to come together as a collective. Then we have Barney Swan, who is one of the explorers that I got to go to the Arctic with. So he's going to be talking about solutions for climate change, and he's a really fantastic speaker with a crazy story. So he's going to be great. And then on the Sunday, we have the planet track where we're really focusing a lot on youth. So we have a youth panel, lots of amazing young Singaporean activists who are all doing different things. Really excited to share their stories. And then we have a fashion track where we talk about sustainable fashion. So lots of different elements for different people, but yeah, we're all very excited about always pushing the edge. And as a festival, we've evolved a lot since we started in 2015. So back then, it was more about supporting conscious brands. And now, fast forward a few years, we have implemented different things, and now we're trying to be as sustainable as we can. So in the beginning, we still had meat, we still had single-use plastic at our first event. We talked about it very publicly because we didn't know what we were doing. We're also on a journey. 5 years later, we are now carbon neutral. We're almost zero waste, because we don't think we can fully be zero waste. Almost zero waste. We're vegan this year for the first time in Singapore. And we also we're trying to be carbon negative, carbon positive, net positive, so that we are planting a lot of trees this time as well. So we're always pushing our own boundaries and our edge, so that we can, make sure that we're doing as much as we know we can do and kind of be a leading example for other events. So if we can do it for like 4,000 or 5,000 people, you can definitely do some things in your home or some things in your office.
Great, that sounds exciting. I think all of us would want to try and visit. Maybe we can also share, other than Conscious Festival, what does Green is the New Black they can do daily? Like what do they actually what are the articles that you write, that you share? What are the little things that you do besides the huge festival itself?
So on our website, we talk a lot about a few key different topics. So it's kind of fashion, travel, well-being, business, similar to the topics that we cover in the talk. So what we designed at the festival, we really wanted to create that experience online as well. So we create guides, articles, we have a brand directory there where you can discover brands around Asia, and now we're adding brands from Europe as well that are conscious, they are ethical, they're looking at how they can reduce their own footprints, they're on their own journeys. So that's like a lot of the content that we create. We have a newsletter that goes out every Thursday that has a summary of all the sustainability news around the world, like the key headlines. And then we create a lot of videos and content. And then we work with brands to help them to share the amazing stuff that they're doing, but also how we can connect and support the ecosystem so that those brands can be more sustainable, or operationally, offices particularly, or other events can be more green as well. So we do some work in that space. And this year, we're going to be launching our first documentary, which we're really excited about. And it's kind of, I think one of the questions was something about like looking at the future and the past. And for me, if someone had told me 5 years ago that I would be doing a documentary, I would have laughed. I mean, why would I ever do that? But it's so funny how life ends up happening, and when you're open and you kind of open your mind to things and possibilities, that all these crazy things happen. So now we're doing documentaries.
Oh, could you share with us a little bit on what documentaries are you up to?
So it's our very first one. As I said, I went to the Arctic with my co-founder Paula this year on an expedition with Robert and Barney Swan. So Robert was the first man to walk both the North and South Pole, basically the first man to do it. And he basically got given a 50-year mission by Jack Cousteau to protect Antarctica. Because there was a treaty that was signed, but it basically runs out in 2041, and right now we don't really know what's going to happen after that. So he's trying to raise all this awareness about how we can protect Antarctica, but therefore obviously looking at climate change as well. So once a year they go on these expeditions, they take 8 youths from around the world, and we got lucky enough that we got selected to go this year. So on that, we decided, okay, well, we've got to try and distill all this incredible information that we're learning and all these great people we're meeting, so we decided to create a documentary, which is really looking at understanding climate change in a millennial way, but also not just the scary parts, but also what are some of the solutions that we can do and what do we need to do as a collective.
Cool. Okay, before we go for a quick break for a Q&A, we'll just like to ask one last question. We just were very curious about how the Green is the New Black name came around. We actually thought it's got to do with the Orange is the New Black. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you can share with us a little bit about the concept behind it?
Yeah, so it definitely wasn't from Orange is the New Black, although a lot of people have asked us that, but it more just came from my fashion background. So, you know, in fashion you say, oh, something is the new black. It means it's the new trendy cool thing. So for us, we're like, sustainability needs to become the new black. And we kind of look at it like we want to make sustainability sexy, mainstream, and accessible. And for us, that means kind of making it cool. And I get questioned on that sometimes. They're like, yeah, but if something becomes cool, then it's trendy, and then it's going to die off. But for me, the way I see it is that if something becomes, well, when you make sustainability cool and trendy, people get used to it. They get used to changing their habits, and then they kind of open their minds, and they actually educate themselves, and they realize, oh shit, like we've actually got to continue this now. And so I think it won't be a trend that dies. I think it's only going to be more integrated into our lives, and that's why I'm still for making it cool.
Cool. That's really cool. Okay, let's go for a quick break. We'll gather some questions from the crowd that we can ask Stephanie later on in the second part. Otherwise, thank you for your time for the first session. See you in 10 minutes.